Billiee Howard is founder and chief engagement officer at Brandthopologie, president of Moho Horizon Studios, and founder of Live Your Story, a next-gen retail site for children aimed at the intersection of fashion and media. She also founded 11, a national women's network with the mantra, United we rise, united we stand, and the House of We, dedicated to the new sharing economy. She began her career at age 22 as press secretary for the president of the Philippines and subsequently worked at the largest PR firm in the world, Weber Shandrick, and joined Allison Partners, where she launched the Brand Innovation Lab. So, Billiee Howard, you are an interesting soul. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, did you come up with all these ideas yourself, or were they thrust upon you by other people, or how did all of this happen?
I came up with the majority of myself, but it does span about a 22-year career, so keep that in mind. It's not like I did all of that in one day, but I do certainly keep busy.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I understand that. I've been in business for over 50 years, and people say, how do you know this and how do you know that? And I say, well, you've been around as long as I have. You learned a lot of things. But you've done such interesting things, and I can't even imagine what that experience as the press secretary for the president of the Philippines, so you must have had some really, really interesting experiences. And how did you get over there in the first place?
Well, I wasn't in the Philippines. I was in the United States, and I served as the U.S. representative for his cabinet here to tell the story of the Philippines at the time emerging as a democracy and a great site for overseas investment. And it was all of these experiences, quite frankly, that led me to write my book, We Commerce, which is actually what I am most focused on today, and I don't think you actually mentioned that. So just wanted to put that out there.
Wow. So you became an entrepreneur after working for these companies, and what made you decide you wanted to go into business for yourself?
Well, I decided, around 2008, when the global economic meltdown happened, that there was an immense change coming our way, a massive shift from the me to the we. And that's when I decided to step aside from traditional corporate America, and I began work on my book, We Commerce. And I started a consulting company, Brandthopologie, as a result of that, and everything that I'm doing today kind of grew out of that idea.
Well, tell us what Brandthopologie is all about, because that's such an interesting name, and I'm sure our listeners don't actually know what that stands for. So tell us what that is and then what you do with it.
Brandthopologie is what I call an artist collective. We sit and at the epicenter of culture and commerce. And, as I, left corporate America, one of the reasons I did that is that this interesting and amazing time period that we're in is really one where this fusion of culture and commerce is coming together in ways never seen before, and we're seeing levels of creativity that we've never seen before as well. And what we do at Brandthopologie is help position brands in ways that tell their stories and position them in the right ways at this epicenter of culture and commerce. It's our assertion that brands are ultimately the studios of tomorrow, the storytellers of tomorrow, and we work with brands to help them achieve that type of goal.
So who would be a typical client for you in that?
We work with Fortune 500 clients and startups, but primarily the Fortune 500.
Aha. And so you were mentioning your new book called We Commerce, and what was the mission behind that idea, and what can readers get from that?
Well, We Commerce is the idea that we've entered an entirely new period, a transformative period that we haven't probably seen the level of transformation since the Industrial Revolution. And everybody is touched by it, particularly companies who have needed to make massive shifts to figure out how to adapt to the new challenges of the marketplace. At the core of everything is this notion of sharing and working to serve the collective we over the singular me. And the book looks at all of the different ways that a brand can wrap its head around these shifts for everywhere from, the C-suite and leadership down to the products and services they offer the consumer.
Well, I think it's fantastic, first of all, that, you were in business for, you worked for people you said you've been in a career for 22 years, that you've worked for people, and, you came, shall we say, lately to the e-commerce world, but you've made such a deep dive into it and such a dent into it. I think that's fantastic. But you also, and I applaud you for this, you created a female entrepreneur group called 11, which is growing around the country. So tell us what its mission is and the kind of woman who would join something like this.
Well, I have a lot of female colleagues that span different ages and different generations and different industries. And, I was sitting around one day with a few of them, and we were trying to figure out what it is about the people that I know that is, that forms this common bond, because it's not obvious. As I said, it's not by industry, it's not by age. And what it is this deep sense of a commitment to empower other women. And this idea of, if united we stand, united we rise. And, that seems, unfortunately, to be an idea that is not as pervasive in the workplace, in entrepreneurialism, in corporate America, as it should be. And we decided to, create a model that any group of women could create their own chapter. It's 10 women, and we meet quarterly, and the mystery guest, who sometimes, drives the conversation, basically is the 11th. So it keeps us fresh, and it gives us a way of coming together, talking about important issues, ideas that we're passionate about, as well as projects that come outside of work. As the lines between personal and professional continue to blur, people want to talk about things and have the support of women like them. And that's what 11 aspires to do. Also, we decided to form this around the buzz of Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. And to us, not that there's anything wrong with, her movement. It certainly got a tremendous amount of attention. But to us, Lean In infers that we're not part of something and we're reaching to belong, when we believe that we've always belonged, and it's our maverick attitude of leaning out that has led to our success.
So how many chapters do you have? And where are they located?
We have 4 chapters in New York. We're actually kicking off our 4th chapter at our quarterly meeting next week. And we also have a chapter in Los Angeles. We have one that is forming in Chicago. And we also have one that is hopefully taking shape in Connecticut. So we launched last January, and we're up to and we're going to hopefully have another New York one soon. So I'd say we're about at, 6, 7, 8, something like that.
Wow, that's great. And I think your mission is fabulous. I think what you're doing is utterly inspiring. And I know that you probably think that mentorships and role models are important, but how do you suggest people go about finding people because I get this question all the time, how do you find a great mentor? And I say mentors come in all sizes and shapes and packages, and you can even get mentors by reading biographies and certain books and so forth, just like you mentioned, Lean In. So what is your feeling about how a woman should go about finding the right mentor for herself?
Mentorship to me has always happened rather organically. In the early stages of my career, it happened in the workplace because I worked in corporate America, and I was fortunate enough at an early age to work for a woman who was a wonderful role model to me, always very supportive, and helped to shape my career, not only in how I approach what I did on a daily basis, but also how I chose to lead my teams and become the type of manager and role model she was to me. I also, was fortunate enough to work for great women. I represented Muriel Siebert, who was the first woman to have a seat on the New York Stock Exchange early on in my career. I represented Faith Popcorn, who's a world-renowned futurist. And I was very lucky that the women that I represented were the type of strong women who were very secure in themselves and therefore had no problem teaching the generation behind them, which was me. And I've always tried to replicate that idea in everything I do. And I think that as we have more opportunities to step outside of traditional corporate settings, this idea of finding like-minded people, whether it's in groups like 11 or, there's a lot of different, networking opportunities that happen for women, by women, about women, or just generally by industry. It's something that should happen organically. And, I'm hopeful that, that's something that will continue to happen more and more naturally over time. The other thing that's very interesting that I'm happy about in our group, and something that I'm seeing as a trend, is that mentorship doesn't only have to be from the top down, it can be from the bottom up. And what I mean by that is I'm privileged enough to, yes, be a role model to some women who are millennials and, a decade or so behind me, but I'm also open-minded enough and proud enough to say that there are many things that they teach me as well. So that's the type of attitude that I would think would be a good one for others to replicate.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because there's a couple of things you said that I wanted to mention. Number one, you said women who are secure in themselves. And I'm sure you've heard for many times, oh boy, I don't want to work for a woman boss. She's the worst.
Right.
And I think that could be true, just like there are horrible men bosses. But I think if a woman is secure and does realize, she's lucky to have gotten where she's gotten and very happy about it, that she absolutely wants to mentor other people. But I do think that women who are secure, I will say this, and successful, also look for serious women. In other words, not somebody who is just thinking this is a lark, or I'm not willing to put in the time or the effort or the hours or things like that. I mean, a secure woman who is going to give of her time wants someone who really is appreciative of it. And I think that's number one. And then the other thing that you said about learning from millennials, oh my gosh, I mean, their entire way of thinking is so different that I think, it makes you kind of lighten up a little bit, because a lot of millennials, don't really look for the security of a job. They look for, okay, I'm here, what can I learn? And then I'm moving on. And they don't want to take the 5 years or 10 years it takes to get to the post that many people took that time to do. I see this in many. You're talking about you've got this 11, but I can see this in many associations that I belong to. The people do not want to take 5, 6, 7 years to go from committee member to secretary to treasurer to first vice president. If they want to lead, they want to lead now. And I just think it's an interesting attitude. Some of them can do it and some of them can't. And there are a certain amount of dues that have to be paid. But you're right. Millennials have a lot to teach us. So you also say that a favorite quote of yours by Madeleine Albright is, "There's a place in hell for women who don't help other women."
That's true.
Since we're talking about that, why is this so important to you?
Because, it really relates to what we've been talking about here today. And, there's nothing that I despise more than a woman who goes out of her way to not only not help another woman, but because of her own insecurities, goes out of her way to potentially put her down or, prevent her from ascending because in some sick way they think that takes away something from themselves. And unfortunately, I think that that's an attitude that we've seen happen over a very long period of time. And I'm hopeful that, with the changes of power for women, empowerment as well as power, two very similar things, but very different, I'm hopeful that as more and more women become comfortable with themselves and comfortable with positions of authority, that they will feel the need and the mandate to help others, as opposed to the complete opposite, which I think we've unfortunately seen too often in the past.
So, if you're going to give a comparison now, because you've been in the corporate environment as well, there are some petty things that men do to each other, but what do you see the main difference be how a woman helps another woman as to how a man helps another man?
Well, I think that emotion is a double-edged sword, and I think that sometimes, emotion can